Welcome everybody to another edition of MD After Dark. This is Michael here, and I'm going to be your bracketologist throughout the next couple of months. And today we're going through my first edition of bracketology for the year. So I tried to record my bracketology onto another website or like a bracket type thing, but I literally lost everything and it literally just deleted on itself for some reason. So I just kept it in my notes, and for this week, I'm gonna just read it out loud to you guys. I'll try to show you next week like what I have in the physical bracket, but for this week, I would just tell them what I have for projections. I won't try to go too in depth this week. I'll try to go more in depth next week because of all the stuff that has been happening with the deletion of the files. I don't know, it's getting annoying. But anyways, let's get started. First of all, our bracketology. We're going to start out with the West region. My number one overall seed in the NCAA tournament is Arizona, the auto bid for the Big 12. I mean, of course, they are by far the best team in college basketball right now. I mean, they have outstanding freshman Koa Pete, Jaden Bradley is pretty solid as well, and they just overall just got a very solid team. There's probably players I haven't even mentioned that have just been having really good years for Arizona. Overall, Arizona, of course, everybody knows for their offense, but their defense has really stepped up this year, and that is why they're by far like the best team in college basketball right now. That is, they are the number one seed in the West. And then 16 seeds do go up for the first round matchup. I have in the first four, the SWAC out of bid, Bethune-Cookman, and the MEAC out of bid, Howard. Now, Bethune-Cookman was the only team entering this week to have a losing record in this bracketology, but they did win Monday night, so they're 11-11 now. Meanwhile, Howard, they were kind of inconsistent in the MEAC, but they have the best resume so far, so that's why I picked up Bethune-Cookman and Howard there as my 16 seeds in the West region. 8th seed, I got Villanova. Villanova's having a pretty solid year. That's why I think they're going to continue to go up as the bracketology goes. They have a pretty solid squad under Calvin Willard there. And then number 9 seed, I got SMU. Of course, from the ACC, SMU's been having a solid year. They are my 9 seed in the West region. My 5 seed I got is Florida. Florida's been playing a lot better basketball now, especially with Boogie Fland finally playing to expectations. He's been very good for Florida right now. They are my 5 seed in the West region. At the 12 seed, I have Yale, my Ivy League champion. Yale is always going to be a threat in the NCAA tournament. Of course, they have this really good big Nick Townsend, who's really fun to watch. He's kind of like a little bit of Danny Wolf when he was at Yale 2 years ago. So I definitely recommend watching Nick Townsend in Yale. They're kind of fun to watch. And then my 4 seed in the West region, I have Purdue. Purdue, definitely, they were like a 1 or 2 seed a week ago, but they lost 3 straight. And now here they are at the 4 seed. They lost to UCLA, Illinois, and to Indiana the past 2 weeks. So they fall a little bit to 4. I think they'll definitely bounce back and climb their way back up. But right now I have them as a 4 seed, but not because of those losses. 13 seed, I have Liberty, the Conference USA out of it. Liberty's always been an NCAA tournament team. They've always been really good and always been a threat to the power conferences. I'll definitely see how Liberty can definitely win their conference tournament in the Conference USA. They could definitely give a run for their money for the higher seed. A run for their money. 6th seed in the West region, I have Arkansas. Arkansas took a tumble, lost to Kentucky, so they dropped a little spots, but still, like a team led by John Calipari, and this Arkansas team made the Sweet 16 last year. I wouldn't count them out. I think they'll definitely climb their way back up, but they definitely took a tumble with that Kentucky loss. That did not help their cases. And then my 11 seed, I have in the last 4 precursor to that, once we get to the bubble, Santa Clara and San Diego State. This is very interesting. Santa Clara, of course, is in the WCC. So now that I have Santa Clara in, people are going to say, where's St. Mary's going to be? That's going to be a good question. But Santa Clara's been playing a lot better basketball. I mean, they have been great this conference play. They had some good losses. Their only truly bad loss is Loyola Chicago. But otherwise, they have a St. Mary's win. That's impressive as well. They did beat St. Mary's. And overall, I mean, they've been playing some good basketball, and they could definitely, and they gave Gonzaga a run for the money. They only lost by 12 to Gonzaga. So I think if those two meet in Santa Clara, I think Santa Clara's got a good shot at winning that game. And then, of course, San Diego State has been one of the best teams in the Mountain West. Of course, you got Miles Bird. Magoon Guath has been injured, but when Guath comes back, he has been their primary rim protector. Just been very good for the Aztecs. My 3 seed, I got North Carolina. North Carolina's been playing some good basketball. They've been winning. North Carolina is North Carolina. Of course, you got Henry Visar is great over there. So I got the Tar Heels at the 3 seed. 14 seed, I have Oakland, the Horizon League auto bid. Oakland, of course, remember 2 years ago when Jack Goldkey went off against Kentucky. Oakland will always be a threat in the NCAA tournament. So Oakland is my 14 seed. 7 seed, Texas A&M. Texas A&M has been playing some good basketball. They are currently leading the SEC overall. They're the best team in the SEC in conference play record right now. So they're going to keep climbing up. They're a 7 seed right now. And then a 10 seed, I have UCF. Definitely that win over Texas Tech definitely helped UCF to get them in this tournament. So I have UCF at number 10. That Texas Tech win helped them a lot. And they also beat Kansas too. So they got some good wins there. And then my number 2 seed, I have Illinois. Illinois has been one of the hottest teams in college basketball right now. They previously just defeated Nebraska. They have a really good squad down there. Of course, Brad Underwood always has his team playing very well down there. Illinois is always a good squad to watch. Then my 15 seed to wrap up the West region, I have Marshall from the Sun Belt. Marshall's been having a pretty solid year in the Sun Belt, and I have him as my 15 seed. Now going to the East region, my number 1 seed is UConn. This is my number 2 overall, but this is a number 1 seed in the East. Of course, no self-explanations. Their loss was only to Arizona, and they've just been dominating ever since. My 16 seeds are LIU from the NEC and Vermont from the America East. Vermont's always been a consistent NCAA tournament team, but they've been kind of slacking this year. And meanwhile, LIU from the NEC, they've been putting up a decent season over there. The NEC, not really that great. So LIU gets the bid there. 8 seed, I got my Badgers. I got Wisconsin. Wisconsin kind of took a trouble to USC a week ago, but ever since getting killed by Purdue, they've been playing some great basketball. They beat Michigan. That was a great win. But then again, they had some stinkers against Minnesota where they barely won. But they looked good against Ohio State on Saturday. So Wisconsin, hanging around that 8 seed. I definitely have hope that they can definitely climb up. 9 seed I have is Kentucky. I think that win against Arkansas really helped. I think this is where Kentucky should be placed at. I know a lot of people will have Kentucky higher because it's Kentucky. But me, I think they just haven't really had that great of a year. But I'll keep them at the 9 seed. 5 seed I have is St. Louis, the Atlantic 10 out of bid. So St. Louis, again, what a year that St. Louis has been having. St. Louis is 21-1 or 22-1. They only have 1 loss in the year, and that was due to a buzzer-beating loss to Stanford, and Stanford's having themselves a solid year. So St. Louis, they're 1 buzzer beat away from being undefeated. They're a really good basketball team, and the Atlantic 10 is a lot tougher than what people think. So I have St. Louis as my 5 seed. Do not hate. And then at number 12, I have McNeese, the S. Southland auto bid. I made this Bracketology Monday. I did see that Stephen F. Austin did beat McNeese on Monday. So you Lumberjack fans out there, I'll probably put you in this Bracketology next week. This is basically coming off entering Monday. So that's why I have McNeese in there. But anyways, McNeese is still a solid team, even with the Stephen F. Austin loss on Monday. I have him as a 12 seed there. Again, because they lost to Stephen F. Austin, I probably won't have him in there next week, but this is where I got him this week because I made this on Monday and I lost everything, and I couldn't update this before the Stephen F. Austin lost. All right, and then 4 seed, I have Texas Tech. Texas Tech, they definitely been struggling a little bit. They lost to UCF, and now they just lost to Kansas. But overall, they're still a very solid team. They have been missing Christian Anderson back, so if they get Christian Anderson back, I think they'll be all right. Overall, I got Texas Tech as my 4 seed. 13 seed, the Big South auto bid, High Point. High Point made the tournament last year. They are looking very solid again, despite losing Jocelyn Bodo. I love Jocelyn Bodo. But anyways, High Point's having a very solid year in the Big South, and they are my 13 seed. 6 seed, I have St. John's. St. John's led by Rick Pitino. Been up and down kind of year for St. John's. They had the tough non-con schedule, and then they dropped one to Providence, but ever since, they have been winning ever since. Zuby Ejiofor has been having a great year for them, or a pretty solid year for the Red Storm, and I have St. John's as my 6th seed. My 11th seed, I got Texas. Texas has been, they have 9 losses, but they had a tough schedule. I mean, they had a tough SEC schedule. They're just hanging in there. They can get a couple wins. They could definitely boost themselves more into out of the bubble territory. My 3 seed is Michigan State. Michigan State has been coming off a loss to Michigan, but overall, they're still a solid team. Do not doubt Tom Izzo in March. And then my 14 seed, I got ETSU from the SoCon. ETSU's been having a very solid year in the Southern Conference. I mean, I like what they're doing. They're having a bout with Wofford right now, but overall, ETSU's having a good year. They're my 14 seed from the SoCon. My 7 seed is Alabama. Bama's definitely been struggling recently, but you can never doubt Nate Oates. And of course, everyone's talking about Charles Bediako, about him, like a former G Leaguer, now back in college. That's going to be a very interesting storyline how he fits. But overall, I got Alabama as the 7 seed. And then 10 seed, I got Miami, Florida. Miami, Florida's definitely having a bounce back year. They had a horrible season last year. But now with a new coach, I mean, they've been doing very solid. So I got Miami, Florida as my 10 seed. My 2 seed in the East, I have Houston. Houston is always going to be a good team in the basketball. Kelvin Sampson's been coaching them very well. When you got guys like Emmanuel Sharp, Milos Uzan, Houston always just a really great defensive team. They're my 2 seed. And for the Big Sky, my auto bid for the 15 seed, I have Portland State. Portland State's been having a pretty solid season in the Big Sky. See if they can win their conference, make the tournament. My Midwest region, my 1 seed. This is 3rd overall, but 1 seed in the Midwest region. My Big Ten auto bid, Michigan. Yeah, Michigan looks really good. They had a phenomenal week this week. They beat Nebraska. They beat Michigan State. They're definitely rolling. And they kind of had to slip up against Wisconsin, but other than that, they've just been rolling. 16 seed, Navy from the Patriot League. Glad to see Navy. Glad to see that Navy's having a good season. I don't remember Navy being that good, but, I'm glad to see Navy projected in my bracketology. They've been having a good year in the Patriot League. Then my 8 seed, I have NC State. NC State's putting up a solid year as well. They just beat SMU last night, so they've been having a very solid year. I like what NC State's doing. Number 9 seed, I have Auburn. Auburn's kind of have a disappointing year compared to last year, so we'll see what happens with Auburn, but I have them in the 9 seed currently there right now. My 5 seed I have is Clemson. Clemson, they were 5 seed last year. They've been having a solid year. I mean, especially with losing some of their guys, they've been very consistent in the ACC, and they just keep continuing to win. They are my 5 seed. And then the 12 seed for the Missouri Valley Conference, I have Belmont. Belmont is my representative for the MVC. They've been having a solid year. They only have 3 losses on the year. So Belmont having a very good year. They are my 12 seed. 4 seed I have is Nebraska. Yeah, Nebraska definitely took a tumble. They were like a 1 or 2 seed last week. But yeah, with those losses to Michigan and Illinois, good losses, but overall, I think Nebraska's going to climb the way up. Expect them to be a 3 or 2 seed next week. They just dropped to a 4 seed because, I just think a lot of teams surpassed them. But Nebraska, expect them to be back in the 3 or 2 seed next week. But right now, I just have them in the 4 seed because of those 2 losses. Good losses, but I just have them in the 4 seed. 13 seed, I have Utah Valley from the WAC. Utah Valley's been having a good year. The WAC only has 7 teams, which is very interesting. But I have Utah Valley winning this. They are leaving the WAC next year. So that'll be interesting to see if Utah Valley can win it in their last season in the WAC. And then 6 seed, I have... Oh, I messed up. I put St. John's as a 6 seed again. That's a whoopsie. I don't know why I did that. But whoever I did not mention that you're going to say that should be on there should probably be in the 6 seed. I don't know why I put St. John's twice. That is weird. That is a mess up. Yeah, again, the files. I don't know. The files got it wrong. I don't know why I said 6 seed. But whoever is on there that should be on there should be 6 seed. That's where they go. But anyways, and then my 11th seed is Ohio State. Ohio State had a couple tough weeks. I mean, they lost to the Badgers. They're kind of hanging in there right now at my 11th seed. So we're going to see if they can bounce back and try to get some wins. 3 seed I have is Virginia. Virginia's been having a very solid year. Nice to see Virginia back at the 3 seed after struggling last year. Then my Summit League champion at the 14 seed, North Dakota State. Nice to see North Dakota State having a solid year. And my 7 seed I have Tennessee. Tennessee's been struggling a little bit, so they're kind of hanging around at that 7 seed. My 10 seed is Indiana. Indiana just lost to USC last night. But Indiana's been kind of up and down. They had a great Purdue win, but they've just been up and down all year. And then my number 2 seed, I have Iowa State. Iowa State's been playing some better basketball. They're going to keep rolling. They're going to have a push for that 1 seed for sure. My 15 seed, I have the ASUN Autobid champ, Austin Peay. Austin Peay's having a very solid year. I like Austin Peay at the 15 seed there. And in the South region, my number 1's the 4th overall, but number 1 in the South region, my ACC champ, Duke. Duke looks really good, especially with the Boozer brothers there. John Shire's leading his team to a great year. I like Duke as my number 1 seed there. 16 seed, the Ohio Valley champion, UT Martin. Yeah, UT Martin's been having a very solid year. They only lost 5 games all year long. So I like UT Martin at the 16 seed. At the 8 seed there, I got Utah State from the Mountain West. Utah State has been having a very solid year. They were ranked at one point, but then they lost to Grand Canyon. They've been unranked, but they've still been winning ever since then. They just had that one slip-up loss to Grand Canyon, but Utah State's been having a very good year. Number 9, St. Mary's. Remember I said about Santa Clara? Yep, I have St. Mary's at the 9 seed. So I got the WCC as a 3-bid league. We'll get to conference breakdown a little bit later. But St. Mary's, they just lost to Gonzaga, but otherwise they have been having a pretty good schedule. I mean, they lost. I think my 3 losses are to Gonzaga, Santa Clara, and they have 4 losses now. And I'm pretty sure they lost to Boise State, which I'll get the Boise State later, or they're not on there. You lose to a Division II team, really. But, St. Mary's has been having a very solid year. Kind of under the radar a little bit for St. Mary's this year. 5 seed, I got BYU. BYU's been struggling a little bit as of recent. They've lost to Kansas over the weekend Saturday, and they lost to Arizona. So they've been kind of struggling with some good opponents. But right now I have them 5 seed. I just think BYU is yet to beat somebody really good. Their best win was against Wisconsin, which is interesting. My 12 seed, I have Tulsa from the American Athletic. Nice to see Tulsa have the great year. Shout out Miles Barnstable, who I'm actually going to college at UW-Whitewater. He was a Warhawk, and then he transferred to St. Thomas, and now he's at Tulsa, and Miles Barnstable is one of their leading scorers. So shout out Miles Barnstable from Tulsa. And my 4 seed I have is Vanderbilt, my SEC champion. Vanderbilt's having a good year. They kind of slipped up a little bit, but, they keep winning. They keep riding the course of a tough SEC gauntlet, but overall, Vanderbilt is my SEC champ. My 13 seed, I got Hawaii from the Big West. Shout out Hawaii. They've been having a very solid year. Very quiet, but shout out Hawaii. Just shout out Hawaii from the Big West. And my 6 seed, Miami, Ohio from the MAC. I know a lot of people are going to have Miami, Ohio. It's an 11 to 12 seed, but, I know they haven't really played anybody, but, it's just impressive that they've gone undefeated to this point. They're my 6 seed right now. I mean, just the fact that they're just undefeated right now is just remarkable. And that deserves a 6 seed alone about them being undefeated. And then my 11 seeds, my last 4 in teams, New Mexico and UCLA. New Mexico has been kind of under the radar too. They have a good defense in the Mountain West. They've been winning games. And then UCLA's kind of been on and off as well. But they're just hanging on to that bubble spot. I definitely think that Mick Cronin can definitely get his team ready to go for a final stretch. But, remember the last time that UCLA was an 11 seed? They made the Final Four. So they're comfortable being an 11 seed playing in the first 4 to the Final Four. And then my 3 seed I have is Kansas. Kansas had a pretty solid week. They did beat BYU. Darren Peterson definitely, and they beat Texas Tech on Monday as well. So Kansas has been pretty solid. They've been working their way back up there. And my 14 seed from the CAA, UNC Wilmington. UNC Wilmington made the tournament last year, and now they are rolling. I believe they only lost 2 or 3 games all season long. So good to see UNC Wilmington rolling. My 7th seed I have is Iowa, the Hawkeyes. Ben Sturts has been very solid there at Iowa. And Iowa, they've been winning some games recently, so they're climbing up there. They are currently my 7th seed. 10th seed I have is Georgia. Georgia's been losing a little bit, but they're hanging on to that 10 seed. See if they can work their way back up. Then my 2 seed in this South region, I have, of course, the WCC champion, Gonzaga. Arguably could be a 1 seed, but right now I have them as my 2 seed. They're a very solid team, though. And then my last team here, I got the 15 seed, the MAC, the MAAC champion, Marist. Nice to see Marist having a good, solid season. They're my 15th seed. So overall, my conference breakdown. So the most teams from each conference, the SEC and Big Ten each had 9 teams. So those are looking like the best conferences in college basketball right now. But the highest rated SEC team is a 4 seed, and that's Vanderbilt in my bracketology. So I think the Big Ten overall is stronger, but the SEC definitely not lacking. ACC has 8 teams. ACC has been having a bounce back year. They only had 3 teams in the tournament last year. It was Duke, Clemson. Oh, wait, they had like 4. They had Duke, who was a 1 seed. Clemson was a 5 seed. Louisville was 8. And then North Carolina was 11 seed. So the ACC was very weak last year, but now good to see them back. I have them projected 8 teams in. Big 12, of course, is always good. I have projected 7 teams in for the Big 12. Of course, they are very top heavy. Teams like Arizona, Kansas, Iowa State, Houston, Texas Tech, they're very top heavy, but kind of lacking in the middle there. The Big East, I have 3 teams projected. That is the least amount in a Power 5 conference. Of course, the WCC, surprisingly, I have 3. And then the Mountain West gets 3 teams as well. Looking at the bubble, my last 4 buys are Miami, Florida, UCF, Texas, and Ohio State. Miami, Florida, and UCF is projected as 10 seeds. Texas and Ohio State, I have projected as 11 seeds. My last 4 in, I have New Mexico, Santa Clara, UCLA, and San Diego State. Of course, I mentioned New Mexico and UCLA would be facing each other. Usually the first and the third teams in the last 4 in don't face each other. Usually the first and second team, but New Mexico and Santa Clara played each other in non-conference play, so that's why New Mexico had to settle for UCLA and Santa Clara had to settle for San Diego State. There's my last 4 in. Now, my first 4 out. First of all, we got TCU. Of course, TCU has some solid wins. They beat Wisconsin, but also they have a terrible loss. They lost to New Orleans. What the heck? But TCU has been very on and off. I mean, they started off 11-3, pretty solid, but then they collapsed against Kansas, and their season's kind of spiraling out of control right now. So I got TCU there in the first 4 out. Also, next I got Washington. They are the best 10-loss team in the country. Of course, you got Heinz Steinbach, who's been very good. Zoom Diallo. I mean, they got a decent squad, but they just don't have that much impressive wins. They have good losses, just not that any impressive wins at all for Washington. And I got Seton Hall. Seton Hall barely missing out. Seton Hall's got some good opportunities. I know they play Villanova tonight, so that's a good opportunity. Try to get a quad 1-1. But again, Seton Hall's been racking up wins. I just don't think they've beaten really anybody noticeable for them to get in. And then USC. USC in the first 4 out there. That win against Indiana will help. They definitely beat Wisconsin. That was their best win. But other than that Wisconsin win, they don't really have that many impressive wins. So there I have USC there in the first 4 out. My next 4 out, I have California. You know, California's got a good win against North Carolina, but they also kind of have some iffy losses there and there. I have California as my next 4 out. Akron. I got Akron in my next 4 out. You know, they've been having a very solid year. I mean, they've lost, I believe they lost to Purdue. No, they lost to Alabama. They have decent losses, but overall, they're in the MAC. That's why they're eliminating them in the next 4 out. And then I got VCU. You know, VCU, I mean, they've been very solid in the A-10 this year. I have them in the next 4 out there. And then my last team in this bracketology I'll talk about is Baylor for my next 4 out. You know, they kind of have a tough schedule, but they don't have that many impressive wins. And Charlotte also ball the bottle anyways. That will do it for my bracketology for today. Sorry I didn't really show you like my whole bracket. Sorry about the files crashing. And sorry about St. John's having listed us twice. I don't know why that happened. I'll try to be better next week. I'll try to get you guys a bracket so that way you can look at next week. If you hung on to this video, I applaud you. You have a very great attention span, and you got a bright future ahead of you. So thanks for watching this video, my first edition of Bracketology. Second edition, I'll try to get out on Monday. Hopefully there's no issues with the crashing of the bracket again. Hopefully not. But anyways, thanks for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one.